Hi, I've been looking at several films on YouTube lately, and it's taken my mind away from the technical side. And if you look up the sensei yourself, I'm going to talk a little bit about energy, and you may be interested in just hearing about it, or you may find it of no interest whatsoever. I've said before that the majority of Aikidoka aren't really interested in, I haven't found it anyhow, in the working out of the energy side. I'll explain that a bit more, because energy is just a short word, isn't it? But the person I've recently seen a YouTube film of is Shihan Robert Nadeau. He doesn't mind being called Bob either. Sorry, Bob. He's confusing me now because the way he uses it. Okay, so let's say Sensei Nadeau, he's been doing energy work and talking to his students and those who have been to interview him and see him for a long time. I'd just like to give you a little bit of background about this. I used to go in the early 80s. I first met Saito Sensei in person in New Zealand in 1983. He was very technical and always has been, but such smoothness and timing, he must have been working on another level that I've found out over the years you have to be on. But Nadeau Sensei, he's been on about this energy and what he got from O-Sensei. I don't know how long he stayed in Iwama, but he was with O-Sensei in O-Sensei's later years, when O-Sensei really was talking in languages that nobody really understood him. His students didn't anyhow. And he was intrigued, Sensei Nadeau was intrigued in O-Sensei's methodology, the way he would demonstrate his Aikido. So he was at a time where that was more important to him than just the technical side, or that's how I read it. I went to, after meeting Saito Sensei in New Zealand in, I think it was February '83, I was recommended by a New Zealand chap to go to California, where it was classed as Saito Sensei's best top world student, Bruce Klickstein. Now, we've found that later on, Bruce Klickstein sadly was not a good person in himself. But if we could just separate that for a moment and look at the technical Aikido. When I used to attend, so I would go and I'd be Uchideshi, living in the dojo, and I found him, apart from Saito Sensei, the absolute best I'd ever seen, and his power was ridiculously enormous. He could throw me as if I'm throwing a cardboard beer mat, one of these little fibre mats they put on the bar to put your beer on. I never experienced anybody who could throw me with such ease and so fast, because I'm a big guy and always have been, and I've not been a good uke, as far as lightness is concerned. But carrying on from that, going there several years, I then timed it so that I could go while in the dojo to a gathering that was like a summer retreat, where you would get lots of different teachers teaching. At the time, senseis like Juan Nguyen's, Pat Hendricks, Kim Purser, Bernice Tom, Bill Witt, all these senses were not that old, nor was I. And I met them as friends really, but as also practitioners on the mat, and I think younger still, or maybe the same age as Sensei Hendricks and Kayla Fader, was another person that really impressed me. He had superbly clear Aikido. So I would go to summer school and we would have different senseis come, and the current doshu, when he was 37, he came one year and we trained on his mat at this summer camp. And I'll call him Bob Dodo because that's as I knew of him then. He came on and really wide posture stances, and I felt as if he had a lot of charisma. He did attract a lot of young ladies, and I don't know whether that was talking about the energy work or his smooth style. But not many men I found at the time followed him, not in vast numbers. So I used to watch him, and then after class, when we'd all finished in the evenings, I thought one day I'll ask him if I could talk to him about what he saw as this energy work that he talks about. And I asked it after a particular session when he called up Sensei Hendricks. As I say, she was a very young lady then, can't remember what age, but you know, you work it backwards. It was in the early 80s, let's say it was, I'll guess say 1985, and now I'm 72 in 2022. So work it out. Anyhow, he called Sensei Hendricks up as Uke. He told her to turn the other way and said, when I say attack, I want you to attack me in a yokomanuchi. Sensei Hendricks done this, turned the other way, and he made like a circle with his arm over his head, just as you'll see O-sensei doing it with a Jo. So he made like a spiral, he was making like a spiral circle, and I thought, what was he doing? He then said, now, or whatever the instruction was to Sensei Hendricks, she turned, at high speed attacked him in the yokomanuchi. She didn't even touch his head, but the next thing she was flying at, you know, his head at height, and she took ukemi at such a height, it was unbelievable to see anybody could just from a yokoman attack go into flight. It was as if she was flying in the creation of what he made earlier, the spiraling circle that he made earlier. I, like most other people, was quite amazed at what he'd achieved, but I, knowing Pat as a friend and student at the time, I looked at her as she was getting off the mat, and her face was completely white, as if everything had been drained out of her. I've never talked to her about this, and I wondered what he could have done to create this type of void, sphere, whatever you may wish to call it. So I thought, I'm going to ask him, I'm going to find out what this is all about, because you can't see nothing, but there must be something there. So I asked him, and he said, let's have coffee and donuts. Those were his exact words. So that evening we met up. I didn't have coffee and donuts, I don't think, but I know he did. And as I sat on his left side, he was talking to me about energy, but he was talking more as if he was drifting off. His mind was drifting back, as if he wasn't really there. You know, he was getting video film, I think, coming to his mind. Now, watching him from the mid-80s to recently, in 2022, he still seems to be what I call, and I don't mean this rudely, sense if you ever see it, but he comes across as a little bit of a scatterbrain, because he goes, and then he starts speaking. It may just be a characteristic of the human being rather than the martial artist. I didn't follow him because I felt as if you can't understand somebody, why would you follow them? He doesn't talk in riddles like O-Sensei was supposed to be, but he does, and I'm asking you to sort of look up some of his work and see if you can understand it. I certainly can't, or let me put it this way, I certainly couldn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a series of a few films talking about how I see energy. He calls it an outer circle, the centre to the outer circle, and he talks about a circle and he talks about the centre. But to me, a layman who needs things spelling pretty much in plain English, I've never understood him. A lot of people say, oh, it's really deep, it's really, you know. But what I think it is it takes a lot to be centred in any martial art. I think it takes years of study. So by just saying you're the centre, there's the circle, your energy goes out to the circle, and I implore you to study him and watch some of his films and come back to me with any information that you think relevant that I'm missing. So his Aikido works that I've seen with my own eyes. He's got good techniques as well as far as the technical Aikido goes. He's a Shihan, he's been around many, many years, devoted his life pretty much now to Aikido. So I admire him as one of our greats. And he has given me some keys to open doors of my own. And that's what I'll be talking about in this series of energy work. If you're just interested in pure technical, save your time and don't even listen to these until you're ready to listen. So have a look at his films when you can, what you can find. It's Robert Nadeau, and he's from the Bay Area in California. And see what you make of his lectures and anything that you can find. And then come back to me with questions, please. And if I don't answer them, you may even be able to tell me what I'm missing. But put together technical and what he's found from O-Sensei, and I believe that's what we all should be looking for. The problem is we've got to understand it clearly, and we've got to be at a stage where it's of benefit to us. I think you'll agree, or I hope you'll agree. Thank you for your time.